Hi, Marco Di Stefano here. I'm doing this video which has been requested by a lot of people interested in Flow, with coming to me with the question, okay, but how do I add my own library to Flow? The case I'm showing you today is about the Spitfire Studio Brass, which actually is a new library and I did not yet implement it in Flow. So we are going to do that together. So first things to do is to work on the Vienna template. So here the first things to do is to identify where are we going to add this library. So here, as you can see, there is already an instance which is called brass, and this brass instance has still some room to take new instruments. So probably the best choice it will be to add it here. So let's start. Okay, so here we are going now to add a new contact instance. So I'm using contacts 6 in this case, and we are going to load Spitfire Studio Brass. Let's start with the first one, being horn solo 1. So loading. Alright, now that the instrument has been loaded, you need to analyze all the channels that you have already used inside this instance and actually take just the next one. To do that, it's very easy if you go in the automation mapping. So here you can see that from 1 to 16 they are all taken, and from 2 to 16 they are all taken. So probably this is going to be 3, 1. Continuing from here to 16, 3, 1. So we are going to put here the name. STB is actually the acronym that I'm giving in Flow, Studio Brass. And I'm going to write, so STB horn solo 1. Okay, now that is done, so you can see that here we've loaded the instrument, the main instrument with all the articulation. But actually you will see that when you load such kind of instrument, you do not have really all the articulations that you can have. So in that case, what I always do is the following. You go in advanced, and here you can find the core techniques and the decorative techniques. So just remove this one and load this one first, and then this one. So now we are sure that we have all the articulations which we need. So then next we are going to put all of them to the same MIDI channel. In that case it just added on the 2, but I'm going to put on 1. All of them should be on the same output there. That's okay. And another very important thing that you need to do, because we are going to create expression maps which relies on the UACC. So go there and click on lock to UACC 1 and 2. So here you can see you have an idea of all the articulations which are available for this instrument. Sometimes there are some also that which are available on the legato, so let's give it a look. Voila, here it is. So let's load also this one. And here we go, and we put it also to 1, and here also we put it to lock to UACC. So actually what we have created here is that we have now one single MIDI channel within the instance brass on the port 3.1, where you have all the articulations of the horns solo 1. To finish, what you have to do in Vienna, now you just have to add the automation which will allow to enable and disable that. So you just do add, and then you say which one is the 3 channel 1, and then you choose always the controller 125, because this is the MIDI CC which Lemur sends when you push on the green or red button. So then you say 3.1, and what do you want to do? Yes, here you can see the name is not yet updated, but you see 40 is the same of your 40. It will be updated in a while, and then you say disable. Okay, so now sending messages, like if you send a CC under 25 with a value of 0 on exactly this channel, Vienna will enable this one. If you send one with the value 1, Vienna will disable. The last thing to do on Vienna is setting the output. So as you can see, here every instrument has its own output, and we have already using output till 3536. So here I want also to add one, which is the 3738. You can keep on adding output like that, but it's important for you to know that the more audio output you have, the more resources it will take. So once you have done this, you have finished working with Vienna. Now you just have to save. And here we go to Cubase. So now I'm tweaking the project using the visibility buttons that you have in Lemur. So I can hide all, and then I can, for example, showing only the brass here. And then, okay, we have a horn. So unfold all. Where do we put the horn? We put it there in the brass high. So let me hide all and just show the brass high. So now we want to create a new, we need to create a new instance, a new track in Cubase, which is linked to the instance of brass in Vienna. Do you remember? It is there. And how do we do that? So first of all, the best things you can do is that always duplicate one existing track, because this means that it will take already all the MIDI sense information which is already set up, and it will be much easier to edit it instead of retyping it again. So you do duplicate tracks. Okay, now you have your solo instrument which has been created here. What you have to do now, of course, first of all, let's start by the inspector, and let's assign the right one. So here we have that it was related to the brass 3 and the MIDI signal and the MIDI channel 1. Now it's connected to the right one. So it means that I can start to play with it, you see, and here you have sound. But you still don't hear any sound in Cubase. Why? Because the output, the 3730 out, is not enabled. So now you go in the output and you say 3738 enable. Here it is. And you can see that now it appears somewhere in the mixer. Here it is. So that was STB horn solo 1. So what I've done in Flow is that for each specific library I have a group, and then all the instruments are sent to the group of the library where there is some reverb applied, which then sends the signal to section groups, like you can see here, brass, strings, mix, etc. So in that case, since it's a new library, I'm going to add a new group, and it's a group name, and I'm going to call it as STB. Okay, add. Here it is. It just put it at the end. So STB should have a stereo out which goes into brass, and our instrument here should go to STB. Voila. So now you have your instrument which is going to the group of the library, and the library, of course, which is going in the brass group of the section which is here. Then, of course, you need to have the reverb also in this one, and another things just to be really, we need to put it in the right order, because this shouldn't be at the end, but let's put it maybe close to STS, which is the Spitfire Studio Strings. Voila, there. So now if you see, look at the mixer, again, you have your instrument, which is pushing data to the group STB, where we are going to put all the instruments of this library. STB is somewhere here, here, and it has the reverb, and then it pushes audio to the brass. And here it is. Brass moves audio to the all, where there is still a very little reverb. Okay, this is very optional if you don't want to use it. So the next things that we need to do is to set the expression map and to set up the right MIDI sense. Let's start with the MIDI sense because it's easier. Why would we have a MIDI sense? Actually, in Flow, every track has a single MIDI send, which is sent through a specific MIDI channel and MIDI value, which identify the instruments. And this identification is then used in Lemur to know which instrument is at that moment connected. So now what we need to do is to look at first how many instruments will be into Studio Brass. So let's look how many we have. So there are 17 instruments that we need. So it means that in Flow we need to allocate 17 of them. Let's decide where to put them. It's all in the about. So here you have the I, which stays for instruments, and you can see each channel can take up to 127 instruments. So you can see that, of course, the first channels are already saturated, completely used. So we can go maybe the channel 6. Do we have 17 allocation? Yes, of course we have. And so let's suppose that from now on we are going to use the channel 6, as you can see here, starting from the MIDI value 39 to store this instrument. So now it means that in Cubase I go there, I set this to 6, like we said, channel 6, and I go there and I set this other number to 39. So now the channel 6 value 39 identifies uniquely my Studio Brass horn solo 1. All right. Okay, to continue, now because this is a new library, we will need to declare the library. So here, always in the about, you have this SL, which means to sound library. And here we are going to select this one and create a new variable, which we call STB, with the unique code of the library. So just be careful that names here should be unique. So we already had STS Pro, but actually, yes, it's true. I just remembering that this is the Pro version, so I'm going to put STB Pro because there is also the non-professional version. And here what we are going to do is very simple. Whenever you declare a new library into the sound library folder, you just have to follow. It's a kind of object-oriented modeling. So the first things you have to do is to declare the name. So typically it's the same, like that, and the description, which is Studio Spitfire Studio Brass Pro. All right. And then there are other two things that you need to set. Actually, whenever you have a library, you need to define the different controls that you have here. So you can see that you have the dynamics, vibrato, release, tightness, reverb, expression. There are some which are always commonly the same and some which are more specific. So what you do is that here at the level of the library, you create a new variable which is called stb pro underscore cc, that stays for control change. And here inside, what you do is that you start to add all the various MIDI change that you want to control. So there are, and if you look at the other libraries, how they are done, so these are located inside this other folder. which is called C. You can see that you have all of them. There are some which are already grouping the most essential one, like for example this one, C.cc basic. This is like the the 1 and the 11, which are always there. So having done that, it means that you have already assigned in Lemur that when you select this specific instrument, in the VST faders, you have at least these two CC. And then you want to add, of course, others. To do that, let's do some of them. For example, now you have the vibrato. Look at this. Vibrato is 21. Okay? So typically, if now you go in the bank, which is called C, you have something which is on 21 vibrato. Here it is. C21 underscore vib. And so here you go and you say, now the next one will be C dot CC21 underscore vib. Voila. And this is adding the vibrato to the list of faders that you will see in the VST faders and microphones tab when you select the instrument. And so you can go on like that and add all of them. I'm not going to do this, just give you an example. But then you can add the release. So just be careful that most of these, they are already coded in Flow. So you typically, if you need a release on 17, and if you go there, you typically already have it. 17 release, this is it. Now if we want to look a bit into detail, that is always a kind of object-oriented modeling. So the CC17 release has 3 parameters. The first one is the number of the MIDI change. The second one is the text that will be shown in the fader. And 0.5 is the default value, going from 0 to 1. So it means that when you select the fader, it will automatically by default be put to 0.5. The same thing that we did with the control change, you have to do it with the quick controls, because each instrument has quick controls which are already predefined. So in most of the cases, for the quick controls, you will always use exactly the same, and in that specific case, I'm going to take exactly the same of the studio strings, which is this one. So I'm going to create a variable, call it stb underscore qc, and put the value. So now what I've done, mistake, stb pro. Voila. So now what we have is that we have defined the first variable declaring that there is a new library that has to be managed in Flow, which has this code, which has this description. This variable has all these faders that will be shown when you go in the VST faders and microphones tab in Lemur. And this library has all these faders which will be assigned as quick controls when you select that object. In that case, like I told you, I've taken, so you can see clause 1, clause 2, T1, T2, and typically this will be 22, 23, and 24. So the quick controls in Cubase are organized so to have always the same one. So CC1, CC11, 21, the pan which is 6, the volume which is 10, and then 22, 23, 24. So that, for example, if at a certain moment you want to use your remote controller and not anymore Lemur, you will know that these 8 faders will always trigger the same thing. But then still, here you can decide what it's assigned to the different fader in Lemur. Okay, so once we have done this, now we are ready to declare the instrument in Lemur. So how do we do that? So we decided to add the instrument in the channel 6. And if you look, you can see from here. You can see that it was assigned to the channel 6 and that it was on the value 39. So it means that now if we go in Lemur and we open the channel 6 and we go to 39, we can now create our new instrument just by adding a new variable which is 39. What do we have to put there? Again, like an object-oriented model. So here the first things you have to do is to declare the name of the library, and that in that case you find it inside sl.stbpro. You remember we call it like that. And the second thing you have to put into this array is the name of the instrument. So in that case it will be horn solo 1. All right. And if you do not want to change any control change or any quick control, then if you are fine with what you have declared on the library, you don't have to do anything. But for example, if you have a specific instrument for which you want that the VST fader will be different than the one of the whole library, then you can still do that here, because you can go there and say 39 and then you put CC. And in that case, what it will do is that it will override the value that you have defined on the library. And it will take this one to show the control change. And the same you can do with the quick controls. So let's look at some where this is done. For example, here you can see, here you have a CC because it's different. Typically for the quick controls, it's always the same. So you don't find an example for that. So let's remove this one because we don't need it. At this stage, to recap what we have done, we have already Vienna with our instrument. We have Cubase with our track connected to Lemur, because this is all the connection to Lemur, and connected to Vienna because this is the connection to Vienna. And the main part which remains to do on Cubase is the expression map. Okay, so how do we work with expression map in Flow? Let's start by looking at which expression map do we have there. And so let's do a couple of them. I'm not going to do all of them in this video. So if I click there, I see that the first expression map that I have is long. And the second one is long stopped con sordino. All right, so what we are going to do is on this instrument declare a new variable which is related to 39 and call it AC, which means articulation change. This library is going to hold the list of all the articulation in the exact same sequence as you will have them later on in the expression map in Cubase, which in Flow it also corresponds to the exact same sequence as you see them in Contact. So the first one, it will be the long. I'm going to add there. So how do we add articulations? Articulations, you find them all inside the folder which is called A, the abbreviation, and here you have all of them. Of course, depending on the version of Flow that you took, you will have only the articulations related to your library, so probably you will not have all of them. But then, as you can see, the L is the long. So what you do is that we go there and we say, all right, so the first one is the long. Here we go. And then we had the second one, which was long stopped con sordino. So let's go find it. Typically, they are always ordered, so you find it in the L. Wait, let's see if you have that already. Long. Okay, so you see that you have the long stopped, but you do not have the long stopped con sordino. So in that case, we are going to create it. So L stop CS. We create a new articulation that will come there, and the only thing we need to write inside is the text that will appear then in Lemur. So long stopped concertino. So now we have declared this new variable lstop.cs, and we are going to put it in our instrument there. So a long stop CS. So now what we have done is that we have assigned two articulations to this instrument. Save. And to make all this work, we need the last thing to do, which is setting up the expression map. So we go in the expression map setup and we create a new one specific for here. And we call it STB horn solo. So the good news for the Spitfire Studio Brass is the articulations, they are always almost the same. So probably I'm going to create one and then always use the same, but in that specific case, so what we are going to do is to create a simple one with only two articulations. And the remote that you see here, 1 and 2, refers exactly to the order that is set here. So the first one is this and the second one is this. So don't mess up with the orders, otherwise things will not match. And now we say, okay, the first one was a long and the other one, and at the custom articulation text long, okay, just long, it's on that direction, it's a controller change on the 32, and the value here you find it there, it's 1. It's UACC, so if you know UACC, you know that is going to be always the same for the long. And the second one, it was stop concertino, stop concertino direction. We add here and we say it's a controller on the bank 32, and the value is 7. So we are going to add 7 here. And this way, actually what we have done is that we have created the expression map where we have two articulations, being the first one the long and the second one the long stopped. And as you can see, when we switch to the articulation 1, the value 1 is sent to contact, and when we switch to the articulation 2, the value 7 is sent. On the bank 32, that is where actually the UACC is listening to control for control changes. So now we close and we just apply this one. Here it is. Okay, so you can see that we have two. So now you don't see. Voila. So now you don't see what I'm doing with Lemur, but you can see clearly that now I'm just pressing and you can see that this is changing. Voila. And then even more, you can see that here is changing. Just be simply, I'm in this moment, you don't see, but I'm clicking on the different articulations which just appeared on my Lemur. And then now I'm on the fader part, and you can see that I'm moving now the vibrato, and all the vibrato moves because we declared the vibrato to be there. And that's all, actually. So once you understand the basics, it's very easy to add new instruments. Of course, you have to get used with Lemur and a bit of programming. But as said before, the architecture of Flow is really kind of object-oriented architecture, and it's very easy to understand, and it's very easy to scale and to implement new things. One last thing that actually you will have to do is still adding some buttons here. Okay, wait, because, okay. On the visibility one here, because you would like, for example, to not in this one, but probably in the next one by instrument, not even, but the one by sound library here, you will want to have a new sound library, which is the Studio Brass. So how to do that? Let's go back to Cubase. In Cubase, you have the studio setup, where you have the generic remote, where you have all the libraries declared. So look, that the last one that was used, it was on the channel 2 value address 11. So we are going to add a new one, and we are going to call this toggle stb. Okay, and then we are going to say, okay, it's 2, and it will be 12. It's right the next one. So what happened now is that he has created a new one here that we need to assign to a specific command and on the process project logical editor. So how do we do that? So now we go in the project logical editor here, and we create a new one. To create a new one, the best things to do is go where you find similar ones. So this is by library, so take one, whatever, and then you can see here that what it says is whatever there is a track which has a name that contains SSS, in that case it will be STS, and is not empty, then it will be toggle the visibility. So you just change this, you click on the plus button, and you create a new one with, of course, the right name. So save. Wait. Oh yes, that was the STB. Plus STB. Okay, now it has been created and saved. So now if we go in the studio setup, we can see, and we can now set this one to use the toggle STB, which is there. And then we do not forget, that's very important, to export and save the file. I'm not doing this now, but you have to do it if you want to persist. And now the only things which remains is to create a new button in Lemur. So I'm going to do that very quickly. Just go here, Control C, Control V. So I'm just duplicating the button, and in the button I'm saying that this is going okay, so what was it? I forgot it. Studio setup, it was 212. So here I'm going to say yes, you will be on channel 2, pitch 12. Voila. I'm going to put a name here which is Spitfire Studio Brass, and that's all. So now I can go in Cubase. Okay, I can hide all, and I'm going to click that button, which makes appear exactly that one. So click, 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 click. So that's all. So that is the process of integrating a library. You have seen it for one specific instrument. It might require some time, of course, when you want to integrate a full library. But just as a suggestion, so far, what I've done now, it was like one single instrument. Typically, when I do integrate myself libraries, especially huge libraries, I do it in a different way, meaning that first I do all the setup in Vienna. It means that in Vienna I add all the different instruments there, and then I check that everything is there. Then I add all the automation mapping for all the instruments there. And once Vienna is completely done and finished, I go in Lemur and I see which channel I need to use for the instruments. And I start to add all the instruments one after the other in Cubase. So as I said before, duplicate tracks so that all the settings that you get there are inherited by default, namely the quick controls and the MIDI sense. And then keep on adding things here. And once you have finished here, then you go in Lemur and you start to add the sound library first, and then all the different instruments to the right channel. And finally you can link the Cubase track with Lemur using the MIDI sen here. And the last thing that I usually do is the settings of the articulations, which is what sometimes take some time, but I must admit that I've developed some Java software that helps me doing this So because in the end, this is a very important trick. Lemur, it's a text file, and you can navigate through here. Sometimes it's easier because, for example, if you are looking for articulations and you want to know if an articulation already exists or not, you just go in the text file, you do Control F, and you say, for example, long stopped. Voila, and here it is, and it's found, L stop. It's much easier than searching it on the Lemur itself. Or I don't know, you want to find ricochet. Voila, here it is. And you can find directly the name of the variable ric to use for your articulations. So Lemur is a text file, and there is there are some advantages, especially because, as I said, I've developed some Java applications which actually tweak the text file and saves me a lot of time because I don't need to go into Lemur. And the good news for you is that soon I'm going also to release this app. So it will be part of Flow. So be in touch. Okay, that's all. So now you have an idea of what does it mean to add libraries on your own in Flow. And I hope that you enjoy your version of Flow. And I'm looking forward to see what you can do with that. Don't hesitate to call me if you have any issue or any question. So thank you for watching. Bye bye.